Hi, welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Sylvia. If you're returning, welcome back. I'm going to be the most vulnerable with you that I've ever been on this channel. I'll just begin with a story that happened more recently. Every couple of weeks, I look at my insights on YouTube to kind of help me navigate what I should focus more attention on. So some weeks I will look at like a video that did well in terms of it got watched the most minutes. Sometimes I look at like where I lost or gained subscribers. And one thing that I learned was since Amelia's been born, any video that I've shown her in, I have lost subscribers. And this is anywhere from like 25 to 150 subscribers, which is a lot to lose on one video alone. You should be gaining followers with each video. And so I was losing followers except for these two videos that contained Amelia. And the first one was her birth vlog, which, okay, that made sense. I think that one I gained like 200 followers. And then the video where I opened up about postpartum depression. As I'm like taking this all in and the more like analytics I looked at and the insights for the next video that I look at, like it was making me so emotional to the point that I started crying. Now this video is not in any way meant for you to feel sorry for me, but, and I felt a little paralyzed. Like I couldn't be mad at the numbers because these are just analytics. They're just data from my videos. And I couldn't be, no, I'm not upset at the results. I think I was, as it sounds like, I'm still figuring it out, but it really, like I didn't even tell Adam this. I sobbed for a good 10 minutes and then I was like, I should just take this as information and move forward. This is a job. After all, the average woman doesn't, or average person, doesn't get to take their child to work. So it's fine. I'll just have to separate work and personal life. Whereas I had very much promised myself that I would include Amelia in my, videos, and she was now part of my life, and this is who I am, and this is where I'm at. And so of course I would share that with you. We've seen a lot of YouTubers do this and be very successful at it. So I think what I realized, what I was the most upset about wasn't the fact, oh my gosh, they don't like my child. I think it was the fact that here I am 13 years later of doing YouTube, 12 years, and I'm failing. I don't know what I'm doing. And this feeds into something that's always brought me a lot of anxiety, which is imposter syndrome, perfectionism, maybe even some OCD-ness. And so, yeah, that's what was upsetting me. It wasn't the numbers. It wasn't the feedback that I was getting from people. It was me. It was a reflection of me. I thought I didn't do it in the correct way. This is why my audience isn't resonating and doesn't like it. So my approach, like most things I do, I just go 180 in the opposite direction. I was like, I will just not show her. I will just focus on her. And the weird thing about that is obviously that's how my channel started. That's, I think, where my channel started to take off was when I really went in as a hairdresser and delivered at-home information where you could achieve your hair goals at home through professional advice. So I feel like that on my channel I've somewhat mastered. When I started it, I had not seen anyone else do it. And to this day, I still get criticized by a lot of my peers for doing so. But one of like the best pieces of advice I got, and I was still in high school, but this teacher was incredible. And they always talked about how as a teacher with the faculty and the like the principals at school, like they're always in alliance, and it's like the faculty kind of against the students. And this teacher always said that their focus was always on their student, that should be the alliance, not the other way around. And that piece of advice has always stuck to me, and I ran with that in my career. Anytime I've worked in a salon, whether big or small, the competitiveness between the artists is always really crazy. Being an owner of a salon is really difficult, so there's that extra added element, especially if that owner works in the salon with you. So there's just a lot of dynamics, and this was the first time that this piece of advice was going to be implemented, and that's when I was like all in on my clients. And whether that meant giving them a toner formulation at home, to use at home, whereas my peers would be like, why are you doing that? You realize that you just lost an $80 appointment in the future, blah, blah, blah. And what I realized was I had gained the trust of that client, and now no matter where I moved, this client would follow me. And that's what was important to me. It wasn't the money of the next appointment. What I was really trying to build and foster was a trust between me and the client. That's the relationship that matters to me. When I started doing YouTube, same thing. So I feel like the channel started to do really well in that area because, of course, I was giving you pro tips at home at like no cost. It was like one of those kind of new things that like nobody really was doing. And I felt really proud that I felt like for the first time in my life, I was like paving a way and something that not only was I super passionate about, but it was continuously rewarding because I would see the feedback and I would see the requests for other videos. So I feel like this was one of the points in my life where I really felt like this is me. Obviously, I felt that too when I got into cosmetology and just hair. I've never felt like I could excel at something as I did in hair. I felt like this really is my purpose, my calling. I enjoyed it with every ounce of my being. So you would think that I'd be on top of the world. This is amazing. Run with it. Nope. I was dealing with a ton of imposter syndrome. I think a lot of it can stem from my childhood and parts of being an immigrant, which I want to share more of with you guys in a later video. So anyway, the moral of the story is that I was so focused on this unattainable perfectionism that I was just so, if I'm being honest, I was just afraid and ashamed of showing anything that was negative. And I think I cultivated this idea, I think, that I didn't have problems. And maybe some of you guys are watching this and like, what is she talking about? And maybe the people that are watching this are my like true supporters and you probably won't see this, but in this career, YouTube is my job. And I feel like my really sweet supporters will always say like, don't care what other people say and blah, blah, blah. But when it is my job to cater to a bigger audience. It is my job to listen to the criticism and to give you what you want, essentially. It is in my best interest to give you what you want, the majority of you want. Basically what I'm saying is I feel like with this fear of maybe truly being myself, that was just too scary, and it would be easier to just show you the highlight reels of my life and hopefully you would come along for the ride, where that's not realistic. And I feel like the way social media has gone in the last, I don't know, 5 years, it's so much more about being unfiltered and raw. And the truth is, I feel like I do have so many things to be relatable and so many problems that I feel like would resonate with so many of you. And a part of me thinks like, if only I share that, that would help more people. So not just with hair, but with in other ways. One of those ways being my anxiety. And this is something that I have talked about on my channel. And I actually looked this up more recently, and I realized it's been, I think, at least 5-6 years since I've done a video on anxiety. And when I did rewatch that video, I realized that I was so deep in my anxiety that I guess it was comforting just to hear someone talk about it, but I don't feel like I really had the tools to help myself, let alone help you. If anything, I think the help or the benefit of those videos it was just nice to hear that someone that maybe you follow is going through the same thing. So I think this whole video is not just me and I'm not apologizing. I think I'm just being vulnerable and admitting something that I've realized is not right. Realizing that, first of all, it's not fun when you can't just let it all hang out. So I'm just expressing this too, so you have a little bit of a backstory on what has been up. But I also feel that as I've become an adult and as I've matured, I also feel like I've gained the tools to help me navigate my anxiety. And I feel like I'm just in such a better place now. And I think this is why I'm able to recognize how filtered I have been and how me sharing more of my issues would be helpful. I always kind of wrestle with this because I never want to come off as complaining. I remember very early on in one of my videos in our teeny tiny, shoebox San Francisco apartment, we lived on the top floor, and my first PR package, I was so excited to get. And I said it in a video oh my gosh, I had to lug this up all the way to the top floor. And I think I was more excited that I got to lug this up to the top floor. And one of the comments was how ungrateful are you? You get free stuff and you're just trying to rub it in our face and you're so ungrateful and blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking I could never complain on social media. I didn't even realize how bad that sounded, but she's right. And I shouldn't complain. And the reality is I am kind of a complainer. And this stems from my anxiety and the first time I ever had a panic attack. And I just remember everyone around me being so calm, and I was just hello, I am dying. Why is nobody reacting? How is everyone so calm? And I remember that moment thinking next time I feel like this, I need to make a bigger deal, because what if I die and nobody knows why I died? I know that it's a lot. I'm sorry if you don't deal with anxiety and you think this sounds absolutely insane. But I think my complaining oftentimes does not stem from an ungrateful place. It's more of I want a reassurance that this is fine, you're fine. But I feel on social media, that's an area that I'm just so different in, because God forbid I complain. So if you're still here, I applaud you, thank you, and appreciate you so much. So now I want to get into what has changed and what I've been doing differently. I would say more so in the last year, that I feel has really changed my life. And this I want to share with you if it helps you in any way. So obviously when I had Amelia almost 2 years ago now, that first year, I was so I'm going to be the best that I can. I'm going to try and be the best mom, and I'm going to continue my career as if I never had a child. And I mean, just all the pressures. And obviously, I felt I was just floating and running around like a headless chicken. I feel the second Amelia turned 1, I felt more okay, I've done this for a year. I'm officially a mom because I've done it for a year. And I actually did better than maybe I thought I would. And now I can focus on how to be a better mom and how to be a better just human for myself. And so with that came really focusing on things that made me feel good. So about a year ago, I discovered breathwork. And I had heard about this left and right, and I just thought it was so woo-woo. And I was like, sure, it probably helps you in the moment, but who cares? Anyway, I did, so Wim Hof does breathing, and that's more like to kind of calm your nervous system. I did, and I'll leave all this information because I know I never remember names of things when I'm speaking live like this. But I think his name is Paul Cremini. Anyway, he does these like workshop classes, and I did it. My sister-in-law was actually the one who turned me on to it. And the first session I did, it literally felt like 5 years of therapy in 1 hour session. I was crying, I was shaking, and like, this sounds awful, but it was like this release. And it's weird because every time I've maybe done this breathwork exercise, maybe 5-6 times in the last year. And every time like a different issue comes up, and it's weird because it feels resolved. And sometimes the issue that comes up, I didn't think was an issue. Anyway, I will leave his information down below. I absolutely think that it is vital for you to try it once. If you hate it, guess what? You never have to do it again. But if it has any effect on you the way it had on me, it's definitely worth a try. Another thing, I had been wanting to do this forever, basically before Amelia was born, but even more so after she was born, and that was to wake up early and to have a morning routine. I am incredible at having an evening routine. I've always had it. I don't care how drunk I was in my 20s. I don't care if I got home at 4 a.m. blasted. I would always wash my face before I got into bed. And I would just always have this routine of like relaxing and going to sleep. One thing I've never mastered until I feel this year is having a morning routine. I would just wake up always at the last absolute possible minute and rush out the door. And I hated that. It definitely got worse when I moved in with Adam because we would go to bed so late. I've had so many times where I was like, tomorrow's the day. Tomorrow I'm getting up at 7 a.m. I don't care if I've had 3 hours of sleep. I'm going to get up at 7 and I'm going to work out and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to do the breathing and I'm going to do all the things and I'm going to have a morning routine. Well, guess what? After 4 hours of sleep at 7 a.m., when that alarm rang, hell no was I going to get up from bed and do all those amazing things. So I realized this morning habit needs to start at night. I can't just decide in the morning to do this. My camera cut out, things look different. That's what's going on. So this summer when we went to Europe, got back, we're all jet lagged. We all three got COVID. So our sleep schedules were just all over the place. And one morning, Amelia woke up at like 6 a.m. and I went downstairs with her, soothed her, put her back in her crib like an hour later. And then it was kind of too late for me to go back to bed. Normally when she would wake up at that time, I would absolutely go back to bed. But this time, because I wasn't necessarily tired because of the whole time switch, I was like, maybe this is my opportunity. Maybe this is where I actually stay up and tonight I'll actually be sleepy to go to bed earlier and start this routine. So the next morning I did exactly that. And then I was like, oh, this is just like a streak of like 2 days. I kept it up for a week. And then I just had this incredible morning of like gratitude. And I remember like I went out on my patio and I had my coffee and I was just like, this is really great. And I thought I want to emulate that exact same feeling tomorrow. Well, the next morning I'm just like scrolling. I still got up earlier, but was just scrolling. And I remember feeling really crappy. And I remember thinking, I did everything I did yesterday. Why am I not feeling as good as I was feeling yesterday? What changed? And then I realized that the day before I had left my phone upstairs, didn't want to wake Amelia, so I kind of just left it. And I was like, could really like the last 15 minutes of scrolling have completely changed my mood? And I was like, no way. So the next day I was determined to try again. And again, no phone. And I was like, well, what am I going to occupy myself with. I don't want to go straight into emails. I don't want it, that's not going to get me out of bed the next day. So I started reading, and I remember I had like the best morning. Being a somewhat of an introvert, I really thrive on alone time, and I really thrive on having pockets of where I can kind of unwind. And I feel like I'm a much better mom when I have that. And for a year and a half, I didn't have that. I would just wake up with Amelia awake and needing me right away. So it would go straight into like opening one eye and getting to her. And then I carried a lot of guilt in like I wasn't giving her the best me because I wasn't fully awake yet. I finished reading a book I had already started reading, which is about human design, which is another thing. This isn't for everybody. And the reason why it's not is one thing I've realized between Adam and I is that I am very much a seeker. I want to learn about how I am, who I am, and Adam sees that as labels. Like if I like read something, I'm like, oh, this is me, I'm blah, blah, blah. He's just like, you're just like putting yourself in a box. And I'm like, yeah, but you're this. And he's like, no, I'm not. So I get it that this resonates with different people. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But I was turned on to human design. I was curious about it, learned what I was, and read an entire book, like literally this big, on my human design, which is a projector. If you know anything about it, I've never read something or learned something about myself that made so much sense. And again, to some people, this would be like detrimental and so annoying. Even the parts where I wasn't proud of, it described it to a T. It made me feel less crazy. It made me understand my purpose in the world and fight with it less. Like really embrace my essence and who I am. And I think with that has come a lot of acceptance. And then because I had so much fun reading that book, I was like, ooh, what am I going to read next? And Atomic Habits had been on my list. And I feel like when I read that, it kind of brought everything together. Essentially what I was doing in the morning was creating a new habit. The way I was going about it is one of the methods he talks about, which is reward yourself or create an appealing reason to do so. So my appealing reason was I get to have some free time. I get to read something. I get to have just some personal time and fully wake up before my toddler wakes up. I literally, like the first week of like reading and having this morning routine, I wanted to like get on social media and like tell people about it and be like, do this if you're not already. Oh my gosh, how did I live my whole life without doing this, blah, blah, blah. But I held back because I'm the kind of person that if I have like one good experience, I'm like, this is so amazing. And sometimes I haven't fully figured it out, and sometimes I get ahead of myself. So I thought, let me like truly make this a habit. And now I think I've been doing this for July, August, September, October. So I've been doing it for about 3 months. So now I feel like I can talk about it. So breathing, learning my human design, and reading. If you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have told you I hate reading, unless it's something that I'm like really into. And that's only ever been about hair and beauty, which was always why I would gravitate to a magazine over a book any day. I feel like while I'm into this, I'm gonna stick to self-help. Definitely wanna get into more fiction. I feel like that will be the ultimate just like pleasure of reading. I think for now, I'm really enjoying the self-help. So if you have suggestions on books I need to read next, I would love that. Oh my gosh, are we turning into a book club? I always think like positive impacts are accumulation of things. It's never just one thing. But I do think having a morning routine has helped me be gentler with Adam, has helped me have more energy and be more present with my child when I'm awake with her. And I think in turn, I'm so much more proud of myself, and therefore I'm able to be gentler with myself in the times that I'm not so proud of myself. And that's kind of what I wanted to get to. It's the fact that I think I've really portrayed someone that really has their life all together, when in reality, I've had life crippling anxiety to where I couldn't leave the house, I couldn't go to work. I've literally had those days. I've been on the brink of divorce because relationships and dynamics are hard. And I think both Adam and I have really strong personalities that when we work together well, it's the most amazing thing. But when we butt heads, it is the ugliest thing. And one thing I am not very good at is like true forgiveness. I think I hold such harsh standards for myself that when like a friend doesn't uphold to those standards, it's multiple times. I wouldn't say like once, but it's hard for me to forgive because I think it's just going to happen again. And so I resist. And then when you're in a relationship, it's different because you can't just like, oh, I'll stop being your friend, you know? And I spoke to a really good friend who's actually from Portugal, from the town I grew up in as a child, hadn't seen her for probably 20 years, and then had a conversation with her, and she's gone through this wild life of discovering herself, and she's gone through just so much. I mean, like she like battled cancer, she lost a child. I mean, a lot has happened to her. And she said that the first step in healing was forgiveness. And we've all heard that. And I was like, yeah, like forgive people that have done you wrong. Like, how's that gonna heal me? Like so they get to win because I'm suffering. I feel like that conversation has resonated more with me than any other on that topic. And I literally one day just took account of my life. What was good, what was bad. The things that were bad, that had been bad for a long time, things that I thought this could bring me to divorce, this could bring me to the end of my career. And then I thought, is this how it's just going to be? I'm just going to tolerate it, but like not forgive. So there's either I accept and do what I can to change, or split and don't deal with it. And then I thought, is that fair to me? Am I giving up on me? Not anybody else, not anything exterior, but is that fair to me? Or should I maybe try with the sense of giving me peace? And I really feel like that has transformed the way I interact with people. And the way you interact with people is how your whole life pans out. And I don't think I had realized that in my mid-30s. And I used to think if I forgive someone or if I am passive about something, I'm not being true to myself and I will hate myself. And you definitely have to make the right distinction. You can't just go blasé over everything. But I feel like oftentimes we make a much bigger deal of things that don't need a big deal. And we can use love and forgiveness and care in so many more areas. And that all comes back to you multiplied. Yeah, I think anyone who is going through anxiety, I know that my anxiety always comes from a place of being overwhelmed. I got married, I moved to San Francisco, I started working in a new salon. It was everything that I had dreamt of, but all way too fast. And that's where my crippling anxiety, I'd had anxiety as a child, but this was to the point that I would feel faint at work. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like worse than a panic attack, like to the point that I really thought, oh my gosh, my life is over in my late 20s. And 10 years later, to feel like I'm in better health, I hope that that brings you inspiration to that things do get better. Another thing I wanted to touch on that I feel like has really helped me live better is acknowledging my negative self-talk, but also self-limiting beliefs. I feel like we've all heard about this and we all think, yeah, that's true. I should think more positive, but it's so much deeper than that. And again, early in my YouTube career, I always thought, I know how to give hair information, but I'm terrible at editing. I am really good at highlighting. I am bad at cutting, like all these things. And it's like every positive I had needed to have a negative. And I think somehow it justified my positive. And that was actually a big tension between Adam and I, because when you work so closely with someone, what you're really good at is magnified, obviously, because that's what's making you money, but also the areas where you lack are really magnified. And when you work with a family member, I think even more so, they are happy to let you know where you were lacking, because there's like this boundary that's not there that I think you have when you work with someone that is not family. So I was already in that negative self-talk cycle, and then having someone tell me, oh, you're really bad at this, in the aims to like become better. But I used it as, I can never do that. I'm just so bad at that. I'll focus on this. I don't think anything teaches you this better than becoming a mom, but obviously there are other ways. And I think with my stubborn personality, I think motherhood was like the one thing that I was thrown into, having to believe in myself in so many areas where I didn't know I could excel in. And I remember thinking, like, if I can do this, what else can I do? So fast forward a couple of months, I started doing my own editing. Am I a pro? Absolutely not. I started making my own thumbnails. I essentially now run everything Ellebangs. Of course, I have a YouTube manager, but in terms of the creative, I'm doing it all. Whether I'm doing it well or not, the fact that I've learned every step, all the steps that I was like, if I'm being honest with you, 2 years ago, I did not know how to upload a video to you. Well, it's simple. So obviously the first time I tried, I figured it out, but I had never done it. And that was another thing that just hindered my confidence and just added to my imposter syndrome. It's like, here I am on YouTube. There's probably thousands of people that would love to be in the position that I am, probably better than me, and they probably know how to make a thumbnail. They probably know how to edit a video more expertly than I can. If you take one piece of advice from this video, is whatever you think you can't do or whatever you think you're bad at, just take a step every day to just try and do it. I will leave you right here. I'm super hungry. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Leave me your book suggestions, please.